What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Episode number 2 of season 2 of the Fanatic Brackets. I am your host, Nick. With me, as always, is my co-host, Joel. In
Yo,
today's episode, we are joined by a good friend from Tech Talk. Welcome, from Retold. And sorry, what was your show name? There's another show with a similar name, so I'm like, wait, I almost said their show.
It's
It's
Retold and Relived with Richie Mars.
There you go. There you go. My apologies. There's another show that has the same exact name, similar or close to it. So my apologies. It's my apologies. But Richie, thank you for being on this episode. My apologies again. How are you? How's everything?
Doing well, man. It's as we're recording this, it's a crazy time within the wrestling realm, and what better way to celebrate the road to WrestleMania 40?
Exactly. Exactly. Great topic, by the way. This is the best first WWE Championship wins. Great
Thank you,
list. What was there any reason for you choosing this topic that you kind of the thought process of choosing this at all?
When you pitched me the idea of everything, and I was like, what would be a good topic that not a lot of people talk about, but would still be interesting to me and lead to more interesting conversations? And I think first WWE Championship wins, the old saying, you never forget your first.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing about winning the WWE Championship for the first time, especially, it really should be that crowning achievement. Like Mick Foley used to say, it's like getting like an Academy Award winner actor winning the Best Actor in a Movie award. It's almost like a validation of your hard work in the WWE in general. So, and I think a lot of these guys and names, they were put on the mat due to their first WWE Championship win. And we have some other people that are currently still vying for that first WWE Championship. And who knows, maybe they can be on a potential list like this. But as for now, I think these 16 are the top of the top, in my opinion.
Of course, and a lot of these have great stories, which we'll get into when we get further into it. But the stories themselves make up for it, and I feel like that's why you chose a great list, and they belong at least in this bracket. So we'll get further into that. But before we start, I'm going to explain the rules before everyone who's listening or watching that have not watched an episode of this before. So pretty much the gist of the show is we're going to go matchup by matchup, giving our opinions on which participant had the better first championship win. Whichever participant gets 2 or 3 votes between the 3 of us moves on to the next round, all the way to the finals. This is an opinion-based show. There's no right or wrong answers. We're going to talk about our opinion. There's many different ways you can look at this. Either whether the match itself was good, the reign was good, the storyline was good. However way you want to look at it is the perfect way to do it. So there's no right or wrong way to do that. So that's just enough of me talking. Let's get right into it. Richie, you're our guest. I'm going to start off with you with the first matchup. CM Punk's WWE Championship win in 2011 going up against Ric Flair's win in 1992. In your opinion, which one was the better first championship win between the two?
What a way to start. Of course,
yeah.
again, both of these are so good for so many different reasons. The CM Punk Championship win was iconic for modern day WWE with, the whole pipe bomb preceding it. And then the match itself being one of the greatest WWE Championship matches and WWE matches of all time in a time frame where the in-ring product wasn't necessarily at its strong point. And then you have on the flip side, Ric Flair, who's coming in from WCW. And, the whole it's not fair to Flair thing that Bobby Heenan was touting on commentary with Ric Flair coming in at number 3. And this is the first time somebody that early entry of a number would go on to win the Rumble and win a championship in the Rumble, and cutting that iconic promo at the end with a tear in my eye. This is the greatest moment in my professional wrestling career. So again, it's one of those things like which one affected the business not only more, but also what like parlayed the career of these two individuals. And I would probably give the edge to Punk because after this match, that's where he was really boosted into the mainstream. Ric Flair was already mainstream when he won the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble. And some could argue that his victory was better. I wouldn't disagree with that. But as an overall impactful first WWE Championship win, that would probably be where I edge to Punk a little bit more, just because of not only the vibe, the atmosphere. Of course, we're in Chicago, and it was legitimately a star-making moment for CM Punk, and so much so that we're still talking about him to this day. So, for better or for worse, same thing with Ric Flair, but I feel like CM Punk's victory here was more important for his career overall.
Yeah, that is true. I agree with those. Joel, who do you have in these two first championship wins?
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's Punk. Punk's has meant more. Um, like you said, it was a important moment when Flair won. We're not trying to downplay it, but compared to Punk, Punk's moment was way more impactful on the business than Flair's moment. Even though, like you said, it was the earliest someone has come into a Rumble and won. It was for the title. Everything that goes into it, but like again, like you said, it was at a time and point when Punk won that the product wasn't at its best. And he was like the light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of people. So when he won, it was like, okay, maybe there's gonna be some change. Did we see a lot? Kind of, but like that's another story. But yeah, I think it has to go to Punk.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Punk too. Although Ric Flair's not just the win, but the match itself was, I believe, the first of its kind to have a championship on the line at a Royal Rumble. Um,
Yeah.
but CM Punk's story was what made up his whole run after that, of him possibly not coming back, him walking out of the building with the championship, even though he might have signed a new contract under the table, and them not really spoiling that during that storyline, that made you believe like, oh no, Punk's not winning this. He's going home. He's done with us. And then the whole shock factor of him winning it, that classic photo of him in the crowd with the championship belt blowing the kiss to Vince. Um, that whole story was just iconic in general. And again, Richie, you said it, people still talk about it to this day. You know, he's won multiple championships, and that's the one that stands out in his career. Because with Ric Flair, he had 16, and I do believe that like your first championship should be your memorable one, but was that his memorable one? There's 16 of them. You can really go down the drain and pick and choose. But CM Punk's was just incredible. So I feel like I have to go with Punk with that one. But he sweeps Ric Flair. Now you also have The Rock. Next matchup. Joel, I'm going to start with you. The Rock's first WWE Championship win in 98 versus Hulk Hogan's in 1984. Who do you have better championship win?
Okay, so this is a tough one because it depends on how
It
you're
is.
looking
It
at it,
is.
right?
Yeah.
Um, Hogan, this was the start of the Hogan run. Like this started everything for Hogan, right? This title win. But then again, for The Rock, this was like um it was also such a big moment, and like the heel turn that happened with it made a lot of sense for him, and it just showed like this is like the new way that we're going. But I have to give this one to Hogan because of the start of Hulkamania. Like this is Hulkamania started when he won the title that night. Um, and then it goes on. Even though he does lose the title and pick it back up here and there, this was the start of everything, and that's why I have to go with Hogan. Nothing against The Rock's first win, but this was the start of Hulkamania.
Ooh. Okay. Good pick. Valid reasons. Valid reasons. Richie, who do you have between these two? The Rock or Hulk
Uh,
Hogan?
like Joel said, it's two ends of the spectrum kind of title wins. You have Hulk Hogan, which is the start of the golden age of wrestling, and then you have The Rock with this giant heel turn where they took the finish from the year before, very controversial finish, and made it one of the most creative finishes they've done up to that point to have their next hot heel. But again, I would have to go with Hogan because there's a huge domino effect that caused it in general, not only for Hulk Hogan's career, but for the WWE career in general. For The Rock, this championship was very important to him. He became the youngest WWE champion at that point in time, but there were other wins that really did solidify The Rock as a WWE Championship competitor. And I don't think that first one really was the all-encompassing victory that The Rock had at that point in time. In my opinion, that victory probably came more so around that Backlash 2000 era where he beat Triple H, and that's where, man, The Rock's the guy now. This wasn't really The Rock being the guy. This was like, all right, The Rock's the biggest antagonist we have. We had probably the best heel turn in history, but in terms of business-wise, Hogan's was bigger, in my opinion.
Okay, because I was gonna go with The Rock, and kind
Ooh.
of bouncing off what you said, Richie, of like him being the guy. I think this is what made The Rock the guy. For Vince to be able to say, "Hey, you're gonna be our next top heel. Let's do this whole moment of, turning on Mankind." I believe he faced Mankind this tournament.
Mhm.
Yes.
Which we'll get into later because I feel like it also led to a great story a year later with Mankind, in his first championship win. And how great of a moment that was, a full circle a year later. So I feel like, yeah, Hulk Hogan's. I mean, I wasn't that familiar with that time of wrestling, but neither was The Rock, to be honest, because that was the year I was born. But it's like I feel like saying, "Hey, you're the next big heel. Let's give you the first championship run now." And then I believe that was the start of the whole Stone Cold feud. Stone Cold came out after the whole scuffle. I just feel like that moment was just that, like I said, the whole 360 turn of that story with Mankind. Just I don't know. I just feel that was a great story and great like ending, the cherry on top. Um, so I have to go with The Rock with this one. Next matchup. This was difficult. I'll start this one off, but this was difficult. Originally, I had Jericho. I had Jericho with this one because
Okay.
all the undisputed shit. But I'm gonna go with Shawn Michaels. This was the match that I believe he had with Bret Hart. Was it the Iron Man match? This was the Iron Man
Yes.
match, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know, Joel, you talk about this all the time. How this, I believe, this was the Iron Man match that you love, and
Yeah,
that
I
you
love
always
this Iron
bring up.
Man match. Even though people
So
shit on it, I love this match.
I watched
I
it. I watched
this
it for the first
this
time,
this is
and
a shame thing as a wrestling fan. When I first watched it, I fell asleep.
oh,
I was just like, and I woke up and I was just like the DVD. I think it was like the greatest WWE Championship matches DVD that this was on, and I was like, I'm going through all the discs in order, and then they had the Iron Man match on there, so I'm like, all right, let's check it out. And by that point, when you're a kid, they've shown like the
yeah,
replays of it so many
Yeah.
times, and it's
yeah,
like as a kid, you're like, all right, when are they getting to like the the off the top rope stuff or like the cliffhanger ending where it's like nobody's getting a fall each, and which was a pretty ballsy move to do for the first Iron Man match, where
Yeah.
it's the most amount of falls gets it, and neither one of them for 60 minutes gets a fall, and I think they did their job pretty well with being the first one
yeah.
and doing something new with the formula that necessarily wasn't explained beforehand. So I give those guys a lot of credit.
Definitely.
Yeah. To go an hour without like, I don't know how people do. I don't know if these wrestlers do it, but I was gonna say like, to me, I had to break it down with the moment because yeah, both moments, Michael obviously they both the first championship wins, but it's just you have to. Shawn Michaels had to prove himself of get his name away from being a tag team specialist and being the Intercontinental Champion, the kind of shifting until he could be the main event guy. I know Chris Jericho just got into WWE around that time, but I think that kind of elevated Michael's career more as a singles competitor than it was for Jericho and how he combined both belts. So I had to choose it. It was just like a buzzer beater moment for me. It was hard to choose, or like a flip of a coin, I should say.
Gotcha.
I didn't know who to choose, but either one wins. I don't care. But Shawn Michaels' moment, I felt like meant more to his career than Michaels did for his career. Could be wrong. Other people could say the reverse. I get it, but I don't know. I'm a Michaels guy, I guess. You can say I love Jericho,
Yeah,
but
you're a Michaels
was it?
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, you can also back me up on that. I'm a Michaels guy, but I don't know. I had to choose Michaels. Richie, who do you have between the two?
Michaels is also a great art supply store too. So if you ever want to go out, and
Yeah.
anything, he
Yeah, I
knows
also
what
looked in
he's
the
doing.
press.
This one was a little tough for me. Jericho at one point was one of my favorites of all time, of course, and he touted being the first ever undisputed champion for it seemed like years and years and years and years, almost where that became his legacy. But Jericho, the performer, didn't really peak until that whole suit wearing hypocrite face Jericho in
That
2008.
is so true.
And
That is so true.
as much as this victory meant a lot to him, how he won it, with the myriad of interferences, with the myriad of things that kind of overshadowed the actual pinfall victory of Steve Austin. And in my opinion, I agree with you, Nick, that Shawn Michaels had the better victory. One, it was at WrestleMania. Two, made Shawn Michaels temporary the guy at that point in time. And a lot of people were seeing it kind of as a changing of the guard, where before it was hard that Bret Hart was like too small to be champion. And now you have Shawn Michael, who's arguably the same size, if not smaller than Bret Hart. So it
Yeah.
was a real risk for WWE at that point, where the narrative was just big guys won the WWE Championship. And with putting it on the best in-ring performer, arguably around that time, it was showing that WWE was open to changing its philosophy from big guys to guys who can work and wrestle and see if that was a draw. Of course, that wasn't really the case in 96 because WWE's business was down. But as for a starting point, Shawn Michaels would, in my opinion, his win was more important than Chris Jericho's.
Okay, Joel. We already know the winner of this matchup, but Joel, who do you have?
Yeah, we know it's Michaels, but we giving this point to Jericho because I'm not letting him get swept. Especially that he pinned The Rock and Austin the same night.
Same night.
Stop it.
Yeah.
I don't care if he cheated. God could have helped him. He pinned both of them the same night. I would
He was
let him.
around though. He was around. He was.
He was chilling.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, Michael's win was way more important, and it was the look of, okay, we're going into the smaller guy era, and this is a good thing because now it opens the doors for more opportunities for other guys. Jericho, again, like we said, he beat Austin and Rock, but didn't really turn out to anything just because of the position he was in. Had nothing. Listen, it became Triple H versus Stephanie for the title, but that's another story again. But like I said, Sean had the more important win, especially that being his first title. And like you said, a whole hour, like I gotta give them credit again because going a whole hour without having a at least one fall is crazy. Like to plan
Yeah.
that out is very like that's why I think they're two of the greatest in ring. No matter what you want to say about both of the guys, what they did outside the ring, or what Bret Hart, his comments, whatever. Those two, this was peak for both of them, I believe, in '96. That was when we had peak Shawn and peak Bret, and having that in the main event and having it in the match that happened and the way that went down was so important for the industry.
So I believe that was the first. Was he the first undisputed champion? Because I was gonna say this matchup are both like first of its kind. Like I said with the Rumble, he had the first undisputed
Yeah.
champion, the first Iron Man match.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
correct.
So going down this list, we may see some similarities in matchups, but that's the fun of it, I guess, right? To see, I guess. That's why I randomize it. But yeah, next matchup, we have John Cena's WrestleMania win in 2005 versus Seth Rollins, another WrestleMania win in 2015. Joel, I'm going to start with you with this one. Who do you think had the
Cena.
better?
Cena.
Okay, that didn't finish. Yeah, sure.
Cena.
Okay,
Yeah.
why
I
do you
love
think that? What do
Rollins.
you...
I love the way that he cashed in. It was awesome. But Cena is another story of Hogan, the start of everything. Um, Especially with the win at Mania, it was the changing of the guard of okay, Cena is now like we always looked at him like years before was like okay, they're building up this guy, but this was like the cement point of he is the guy. Rollins again, great way he went, the first ever to cash in a main event of Mania, spectacular. But I don't think his win had the effect that John Cena's had on the industry. Again, people might argue that, but I just think John Cena's win is more important than Rollins' win, especially because of course it was awesome the way it happened. Um, again with the cash in, and then the storyline after with the Authority, awesome. But again, I don't think it matches up to Cena's '05 one.
Okay, that makes sense. Richie, what do you have in these two?
You said people will argue for this
Ooh.
point, and I will be arguing this point for it. As John Cena's win at this particular time, it was against JBL in WrestleMania 21. And the difference of John Cena being the guy here, and I do admit this was kind of the thing that kickstarted everything. But at the time, there were split world championships. And you had John Cena and Batista, who were both kind of like co-guys at this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So
And
it
the
was
whole thing in
almost
that
like
Royal Rumble where they both won it.
Mhm.
The same
yeah,
time.
yeah. Yeah, you know, and it's like you knew like one of these two guys would be the face of the company. But for the rest of 2005, because if you look at their title reigns, they ended legitimately at the same time, essentially. And they were just kind of like seeing like, all right, which one is going to like peak out over the other? And that's what I think this was ultimately. And they went with Cena because he was the younger guy, and he wasn't in ring as polished as a lot of people would have preferred. But again, John was learning on the fly, and give credit to him, he knocked it out of the park. But with this championship, I don't think this WWE championship defined what made John Cena Cena. I think the year after, where he won it from Edge in that TLC match, that's when you're like, okay, this is the guy.
Yeah.
This is who we're
Okay.
seeing right now. And then with Seth Rollins on the flip side, of course, the heist of the century, phenomenal moment. Reign after the fact, not so great. With everything with Seth Rollins and how he won the championship and what kind of kickstarted the stuff with him and Roman Reigns, and the moment that Seth Rollins, I think, it legitimized him in a lot of people's eyes of being this top guy. And then you had the whole authority thing, and this thing right here really did define Seth Rollins as the character at this time. There are always going to be different moments that define people's characters, and this one really defined characters was the Shield breaking up, the cash in, and that's what defined Seth Rollins. And I feel like a lot of people hold the Shield breakup against him to this day. Why he hasn't been fully accepted by a segment of the audience because he broke up the Shield, believe it or not. So
Yeah.
I think in comparison to John Cena's win, which was unfortunately not even the main event, it went 12 minutes. It was the semi-main event. Still a big moment for him, but I think his moment was more definitive as face of the company about a year later. And for Seth Rollins, this was the moment that made him legitimate. So my pick goes to Rollins.
Okay, because I'm also going to choose Rollins for this one. And I agree with most of what you said, Richie. I do think that to be able to say, hey, we're going to have you cash in at Mania, like the main event against not just Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar too. To be able to put that much faith into somebody who at that time just became a singles guy like a year, not even a year prior, maybe it was a year prior, but and then to have a great heel-ish run right after with the Authority, to put him on screen with them, to have a great championship title reign with them, um, that that was I don't know. It's tough to put into words, but it's like I do feel like to be able to put that much faith in somebody, you really, really have to trust them. And yeah, the John Cena versus I was going to say the same exact thing with him in that TLC match with Edge. I feel like that was Cena's moment. That should have been Cena's first championship win. That solidified Cena more than this one. Because I think because this is my opinion. If it weren't for that Rumble match a couple months prior, don't think maybe Cena probably wouldn't gotten the match. I don't know if that was the original plan, but like, hey, maybe Cena was supposed to win it. I don't know, but I don't know. I kind of feel like Seth Rollins' championship win, the first Money in the Bank cash in at Mania, the heist of the century, a moment that people won't forget for years and years to come. That says a lot. Like, I'm pretty sure people will be like, oh, I don't remember Cena's first championship win at WrestleMania 21 against JBL in a 12-minute match, you know? So, I don't know. I just feel like Rollins is more important and impacted his career personally than Cena's
Makes
10 years
sense.
prior.
Yeah.
So I have to go with Rollins on that one. So next matchup, we have Edge in 2006 when he cashed in versus Mankind in 1999. This is what I kind of mentioned before with the Rocks. I'm going to choose Edge though, but what I meant with Mankind was that this led to a great babyface win when he won it the year after. Where everyone came to the ring, started celebrating. The moment itself was great, and I think with the Rocks, heels never happened. This moment wouldn't happen either. But the reason why I'm choosing Edge is because of that really solidified me with how Edge became a heel. Another person who had to shift away from the tag team scene, and the fact that he had to take Mr. Kennedy's Money in the Bank briefcase and be like, "Yeah, you're gonna cash in." Vince McMahon said you were gonna cash in. Not Edge's. Maybe it was Edge's opinion, but like the way they made it seem was like, "Hey, Vince McMahon came out. He's telling you to go cash in on Cena right after a brutal match." And then the way it happened was like that's also a Money in the Bank cash in that you won't forget. So another situation to where like Vince is going to be like, "Yeah, I have my full faith in you to be that next top heel in the company." And they gave it to Edge. So I feel like Edge's win is more important, more impactful, and more memorable. So I'm going to go with his. Joel, who do you have between these two?
I'm giving it to Mankind. I think this was such an awesome moment. Again, this is a moment that they say changed the fate of the Monday Night Wars, which I think WWF was gonna win anyway. This was just something that helped them out, giving away the finish. But I think it was such an awesome moment, and like remembering this was the New Year episode. This was WrestleMania season. Like the title had just changed on a Monday night. It's
Yep.
one of those big moments. This was Mankind. Somebody. This is somebody a lot of people didn't think was championship material. He didn't have the look for him to beat The Rock, even though, yeah, the way that he won it was the way he won it, but that just added more to the story. That added more not only to the Mankind Rock story, but also the Rock and Austin story and the Austin McMahon story. So there was a lot that went into play with that match. Edge's moment was awesome because I think the same way you
Yeah.
do. That was solidifying him as a heel. Especially that this was the first Money in the Bank. We didn't know how it worked because I know when that happened, I was
Yeah.
shocked because I thought it was something you had to announce. So that was really a cool moment,
But
just
Vince
having
announced it himself. That's made it even
yeah,
better.
Edge just coming out and having that
Yeah.
moment. But I just think Mankind's win did a lot for Mankind, but not only Mankind, but everybody that had to do with that situation, and also WWF as a company going up against Nitro at that moment.
But that's what I kind of said before with the Rocks. It's like I would have chosen Mankind if it wasn't Edge, but the reason why I chose Rock earlier was because it led up to this moment.
Yeah.
That babyface run that Mankind had. Richie, to break the tiebreaker. Who do you have going to the next round? No pressure.
Again, this is one of those matches where I'm just like, gosh, it's like trying to choose your favorite child. With Edge, this is one
Yeah.
that I grew up with the whole ultimate opportunist character. This is where the moment happened with the whole Money in the Bank, which we didn't know how it worked at the time, and that really did silence a lot of critics with Edge and being not championship material, and he proved a lot of doubters wrong due to this win. That being said, Mankind was a very big deal, and I think a bigger deal than a lot of fans that are coming into WWE give it credit for, with the whole Monday Night Wars thing and with the whole WCW kind of shooting themselves in the foot, announcing that this title change was happening. And once that title change was announced, there were tens of thousands of people to switch stations immediately, almost to like, I believe it was like hundreds of thousands of people, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
immediately after the announcement was, which showed how beloved Mankind was at not only as a character, but as a performer from both sides of the audience. And you just have to look at the crowd when this match ended. Stone Cold's music comes out, crowd pops, chair shot to the Rock. I know we mentioned the myriad of interferences with the Jericho entry, but this one had a purpose of Austin leveling the playing field for Mankind, and this victory is the highlight of Mick Foley, Mankind's career, along with the Hell in a Cell off the cage with The Undertaker. With Edge, this one is a great moment for him, but Edge also had a myriad of other moments along with this one. This one, I think, is maybe 1B, 1A, 1B, along with the Cell match with Mankind. So my choice is Mankind.
Ooh, not a bad pick. Not a bad pick. Yeah, so Mankind moves on to the next round. Now this one, next matchup, this is going to be a tough one.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, same reaction I had, Richie. Same reaction. Who
Are you
wants to
sure
start
you
this one?
randomized these?
I did. I swear. Yeah, I swear I did.
Because I
But,
showed this to my buddy, and I'm just like, look at this, and he's like, oh
yeah.
God.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. We shall see. You know what? I'll start this one off actually, just to be fair with you guys. So Eddie Guerrero's 2004 win versus Kofi Kingston's 2019 win. Both stories are very much alike. Both underdogs didn't expect to win. Who fans beloved, and everyone wanted them to win. But the thing is, you have to really look at the moments itself. You had someone like Kofi Kingston who faced Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. What gets better than that? Winning your first WWE Championship at Mania. Then he also had Eddie Guerrero, who beat Brock Lesnar, who at that time people didn't expect to happen, even if you were like the Big Show, going up against Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar was like unstoppable back then. Still kind of was throughout most of his career, but to be able to, that moment of him, win Eddie Guerrero winning the championship, the fans going crazy. Same thing with Kofi Kingston, but I felt like the emotion out of Eddie's meant a lot more to the fans at that time. Not saying that Kofi's wasn't, but it's like, even as someone going back to that moment who wasn't, as myself, who wasn't a fan at that time, to go back and rewatch that moment, to be like, I understand why people loved him. That one promo that he cut on Brock, that infamous promo that Eddie cut, you were able to feel that emotion. That was a real story, not even a promo. It wasn't even fake. He told true stories. To be able to go out there and cut a promo from everybody on live TV, that made you want to root for him even more. So for that, I'm going to have to go with Eddie Guerrero. Wouldn't be mad if Kofi won this one, but I had to choose Eddie Guerrero. Who wants to do the next one? No one of you. No one said a word. Yeah.
I'll go. Kofi's win was amazing. It was awesome. It was a moment that a lot of people should never forget because of the way it went down, and being at Mania, being against Bryan, and what they had to do to get there and fight for that. But Eddie and Brock, man, even though the interference happened with Goldberg to kind of like lead up to the next month's Mania match, Eddie's just meant so much more, I feel. Because Kofi, I don't think he's defined by this title win. I think it was a cool moment for him, but a lot of his best work has been as a tag champion. And I think one of those highlights is New Day versus Usos. That will, every time you bring up Kofi to me, I would think of New Day Usos. Because I feel like that was just that moment for him. I think this is Eddie's moment. Eddie's title win is something that once you bring up Eddie Guerrero to somebody, they'll be like, I remember when he won the title at No Way Out. I remember when he beat Brock. Like, this was something that a lot of people didn't think was going to happen, especially me being young and being a big Eddie fan. I'm looking at him standing across the ring from this monster. I'm like, there's no shot this is going to go down the way I think it is And then when Eddie won and the place going crazy and just the emotion he had, and then also the run he had after wasn't that bad. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you it was a bad run going against Kurt and Mania, then doing the whole JBL, which thank you, Eddie, for actually making JBL because I don't think any other character would have helped JBL the way Eddie did. And I think the reason why JBL became such a hated heel was because he had this baby face of Eddie Guerrero being champion. No one wanted to see Eddie lose his belt, and that made you hate JBL even more. So I think a lot came from Eddie's reign more than just a title win. So that's why I have to go with Eddie.
Okay, not a bad pick. Richie, who do you have?
So I got into wrestling in 2003, and the storyline that captured me the most was Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero. So I have very fond memories of this story from start to finish of Eddie's family turning on him to them saying you couldn't do it, and then finally beating Brock at No Way Out. And the build to this match wasn't that long. It was only about 2-3 weeks to the pay-per-view because Eddie won the SmackDown Rumble, and then he had the promo segment with Brock with the mariachi segment, and then he beat Brock in a tag match. So on paper, it doesn't look like much build was done for this match. But
Yeah.
like Nick, like you said, that promo was the selling point of the entire thing, saying that the WWE Championship was meant I'm sorry for all his past screw ups, for him trying to get clean again for his family. And that was a very powerful statement, especially because at the time, you didn't have champions the size of Eddie Guerrero. For a long period of time, he was the shortest, lightest WWE champion, but his charisma carried that weight to the top. And he would wrestle like he was a big guy, like he would wrestle like he was 6'5", but
Yeah.
he would implement, lucha and New Japan stuff and just be a well-rounded worker. Kofi, on the other hand, was a story that a lot of people didn't expect to happen. It caught fire. And then the thing that sold me on Kofi Mania was the gauntlet match where he was shouting at AJ Styles saying, it's been 11 years and I want like this championship moment, and that's what sold me and a lot of other people on that. And it's one of the best performances in SmackDown history or WWE history. And they had Kofi like run gauntlet after gauntlet after gauntlet, just exhausting him. And him winning at WrestleMania was one of the great moments in WrestleMania history. But without that Eddie Guerrero win, more often than that, that Kofi Kingston win isn't going to happen. So I think the Eddie Guerrero win here is the more important one because of what led after that. Because after Eddie Guerrero, that opened, like we were talking about Shawn Michaels, that opened the floodgates of the workers happening to get the shots at the WWE Championship. This caused a bunch of people to get looked at the same way,
Yeah.
like a Rey Mysterio, like a Daniel Bryan, like a Kofi Kingston, like an AJ Styles. All those guys were then opened up to the possibilities of saying like, hey, this glass ceiling doesn't exist. This is possible for anyone who gets into the wrestling business to achieve the status of WWE champion. And even WWE's commercials for like Shop Zone, they have the image of Eddie on the stage holding the championship up, like looking towards his father saying, I did it. It's still being played to this day. And that happened in 2004. It's 20 years later. So if that's not an iconic moment for the industry at large, and not saying Kofi Kingston's wasn't iconic, but as of this point in time that we're recording this, Eddie Guerrero's title win was not only important to his legacy, but it was a domino effect that increased everybody else's legacy after him. So that's my pick of Eddie Guerrero.
Okay. I mean, even
Very well
Kofi
said.
Kingston. Very well said. Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy to think that, like, I'm not trying to put, like, Kofi Kingston's win down or anything, but it's crazy to look back in it because you did mention the gauntlet of how it was really supposed to be Mustafa Ali in that match. But if it wasn't for injuries, the Kofi Kingston Kofi Mania wouldn't have happened. Not trying to shit on it, but like it's crazy to look back and be like, shit. Imagine if it didn't happen.
It's the butterfly effect, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So next matchup, we have Brock Lesnar's first championship win in 2002, going up against Steve Austin's win in 1998. Joel, we're going to start with you with this one. Who do you have?
Fuck. Okay.
God,
So I think this is the toughest. So I think this is the toughest one. I think this is one of the toughest one on this list, just because they both kind of represent the same thing but differently. So Stone Cold's first win was more of the changing of the guard, more of um it doesn't, because usually like it was Shawn Michaels, Taker, Brett, you know what I mean? All those guys were champions. It was more like in ring polished. Stone Cold was not that, right? Stone Cold was more of his promos and his mannerisms, and he was great in the ring. He was, but wasn't the best, right? He wasn't at the top with a Shawn Michaels. He can't go out there and give you a Shawn Michaels match. He'll give you a Stone Cold match, and we appreciate that. We love that. And this was the change of, okay, this is the new era with Stone Cold. More of like the Attitude Era, people like to say, but this was the new era after Shawn and Brett. This was the new era after the new generation. Um, which turned into a spiral, and of course, everything happens after it. The Rock, Attitude Era. Brock Lesnar is on the same line as that, but just changing of the guard from the Attitude Era, as he beat The Rock and he was the new guy coming in, and it was like, okay, we're gonna take these new guys seriously. And it was kind of cool because of the people that he went against. I think the first one of the first people was the Big Show. Big Show hasn't been in a title picture in who knows how long, since WrestleMania 2000. So that was like, okay, that's cool. And they did that big storyline with them, Paul Heyman turning, and it was awesome because it was like, okay, we're gonna get new faces. And then that's when slowly people started to come in, and then SmackDown happened, and Brock took over SmackDown, and we got Brock and Kurt, Brock and Taker, and all these beautiful matches. I do think Steve Austin's was a bigger win, but Brock Lesnar's might be more important. But I think I'd have to go with Steve Austin here, just because of the spiral because I don't think if I don't know if the Attitude Era happens without Stone Cold Steve Austin, because I think it started with the Bret Hart stuff in 13, but without Steve Austin winning the title, it doesn't evolve. And who knows if we ever get to the spot with Brock Lesnar with Stone Cold never winning the title. Um, but yeah, I have to give it to Austin. But I feel like they're on the same path, just different eras.
Okay. All right, good pick.
But yeah, I have to go with Stone Cold for that.
Okay, Richie, who do you have between these two? Because I'm still thinking.
So I've had my answer pretty easily with Brock. It is he got a tremendous win. Probably The Rock at the time at his most selfless, and The Rock during his full-time to end of his full-time career was probably one of the most selfless main eventers of all time. He got pinned left and right, and I don't think a lot of people remember that. And Brock losing here really legitimized Brock as they would say, the next big thing. But, and that's a big but, the match with Undertaker and the match with Kurt Angle, in my opinion, that's what solidified Brock as the next big thing. And the match with Taker in Hell in a Cell, like during this first run, legitimized him. And Kurt Angle, after that shooting star press, even though he botched it up, that's what people remember of him, just getting right back up and then just F5 and Kurt 1, 2, 3. And that's the moment that made Brock. With Steve Austin, you could say whatever you want about the match. It's impressive it even happened due to the condition of Shawn Michaels' back. So it was a good match. It could have been a better match if Shawn Michaels was 100%. But this is what kind of spiraled through the whole Attitude Era. This was a changing of the guard, much like the Hulk Hogan Hulkamania title win. And this was just happening, I believe, 14, 15 years later. So it was resurging the wrestling popularity because the year before, Stone Cold was just the champion without the belt. Now he has the belt, and now he's going to go on this tear. And I called for a while, this is a weird comparison, but I called Steve Austin like the Bugs Bunny of WWE for a while. Where you have all these cast of characters and Looney Tunes, but the Bugs cartoons where he's outsmarting his opposition, whether it's Rock, Vince, the Ministry, Shane McMahon, everybody, and he's just like still in control. And this championship win was the start of that whole Attitude Era popularity with the segments, with everything else. And this is the confirmation that Steve Austin was indeed the guy. And of course, that shot with Mike Tyson endorsing Steve Austin, just as important. So that's my pick, Steve Austin.
Okay, because I was thinking the same thing that you said in the beginning, but the other way around. I think I've said this once before, Joel, where I think that Steve Austin had more memorable moments not as champion than as champion.
Mhm.
So I think, and I personally feel like Brock was the next big thing from the start. And yeah, I understand your point, Richie, with like having that match against Kurt Angle and Taker solidified Brock, but I feel like at that time being the youngest world champion, holding it for so long, and people have to go through him, and then I just feel like his whole story of like he was the next big thing for a reason. I feel like there was a reason why they had to give him the championship at that time. I don't think he let that down. If he went to the UFC, he was known as the next big thing. He was a big deal. When he came back, he was still a big deal. And I think that title made him who he was. Without that championship, I feel like we wouldn't have seen a dominant Brock. You know what I mean? So for that, I'm going to have to go with Brock Lesnar. Again, I love Austin. I know he's winning anyways, this matchup, but I just feel like there was a lot of moments you could name over that first championship win. Like every time he does a stunner to somebody, every time he pours beer on somebody, the whole milk bath, There's so many moments that he created that you could be like, oh yeah, I forgot he faced so and so for this title. Even that whole feud with The Rock was probably more memorable than the first championship win. So that's why I personally pick Brock. I mean, Brock became Brock with that first championship. So
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
He beat the Rock, one of the top guys.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense. It was just the way that Stone Cold erupted after, and what that win meant. You know what I mean? What that title change did.
I would say Brock's title win like in 2002 was the spark. But then when Brock left, made himself arguably a bigger name than he was in WWE. And then when he came back, and then when he had that match with Cena, and that's what solidified Brock as the Thanos of WWE. Not what he was then at the next big thing, which was great. But before the next big thing had momentum to actually be the next big thing, he left the company. So it's one of those.
Crazy.
It's one of those catch-22 situations for me. And with Brock, he was on tap for probably being a dominant force. But with this first title win, it was the right track. They just took a little detour afterwards. Be it not on the fault of their own, but the driver just said, I'm going off this train. And then he jumped off the train and split. So
I guess,
that's my only thing with that. Again, great points with the Brock and, changing of the guard and things like from the Attitude Era. He beat one of the faces of the Attitude Era to do this. So it's just one of those things where, like, I think Austin's title win was a little bit more impactful, just not only for him, but for the business afterwards.
Yeah, that makes sense. Last matchup in the first round, we have Randy Savage's 88 win versus Jeff Hardy's 2008 championship win. I'm going to start this one off because I'm going to be biased here. I'm going to go with Jeff Hardy's. I mean, I'm just going to say it right off the bat, but for me, I mean, that was the year I started watching wrestling, and I mean, for me to that was the first storyline that really caught my attention and made me feel like emotional for somebody's win. Uh, somebody who I believe that was his first between the world title and WWE championship. That was his first major championship win, and going against Edge and Triple H in a triple threat match. Although people were rooting for him, both of them were heels. The other two guys were heels. That moment of overcoming those two big names, and that swanton bomb at the corner. People would think like, oh god, Triple H is this close of getting that win over Edge. Swanton bomb saved him in that moment. Him going on the top of that prop on the stage, that iconic moment of him enjoying that moment, the whole celebration. Sucks that he lost it literally a month later, but I think the whole moment itself and how emotional it was for him, and as a fan watching him and being a big fan of him at that time, made me, like appreciate him more and want to root for him more. And that was the first baby face that I really got behind, really. So I'm gonna have to go with Jeff Hardy on this one. Who wants to go next with this matchup? I don't know.
I'll go next.
Okay.
It's very interesting because both these championship wins weren't meant to happen. The Randy Savage win at WrestleMania was the tournament, and originally it was going to be Ted DiBiase that was going to win this championship. But as the story goes, the Honky Tonk Man didn't want to drop the IC title to
That's what I
Randy
heard too,
Savage.
yeah.
So Vince made the decision to put the championship onto Randy Savage instead. And Ted DiBiase confirmed it in his autobiography, and that's what led to the creation of the $1 Million Championship. So that wasn't meant to happen.
Didn't know it.
And then with Jeff Hardy, his win wasn't meant to happen, but he had a supporter in the writer's room. If you guys are a fan of the movie She Is All That, Freddie Prinze Jr., he was a writer for WWE at the time. And he said in the podcast where they had to make their final pitches for the Armageddon show, where Jeff won the championship, that Triple H said that, are we really going to trust this guy as champion? And Freddie Prinze Jr. said, look, you don't need to keep the title on him for a longer period of time. Like, again, if you look at his merch numbers, Jeff Hardy is outselling everybody, which is a fact. Like, he was on top of John Cena for that point in time. And that's what makes me wish that Jeff Hardy had his stuff together at that point in time, because what could have been with Jeff Hardy on top of the mountain for that period of time, and during a period where WWE was still trying to find its identity after they went PG. And I think he would have been a perfect person to usher that into the new era. And Freddie Prinze Jr. won out in the end. Jeff Hardy got the win, and it really did solidify Jeff Hardy as a singles competitor. He had many moments as the Hardy Boys tag team, and I think he's going to be remembered more for the Hardy Boys tag team. But with Randy Savage, you have the Mega Powers. His WWE Championship kind of got behind that storyline, if that makes sense. It was almost like secondary. The Mega Powers were the attraction, not the WWE Championship. With this WWE Championship win, Jeff Hardy was taken from here to here, and he validated a lot of people's thoughts that he could be WWE Champion. He didn't hold it for long, but the win itself was probably more impactful for him, despite Randy Savage winning at WrestleMania. And ironically, Randy Savage winning at WrestleMania made the Hardy Boys fans of wrestling. So, with this, I have to go with Jeff Hardy.
And you got to remember, too, I think the plan for Hardy, I remember hearing an interview or something. I think the plan was to have Hardy versus Hardy for the title at WrestleMania 25. But because I think what happened outside of WWE, I think they had to take the title off of him like in the next month or something. I could be wrong. I heard it somewhere. It could be false.
I think it was always supposed to be Triple H and Orton, just because Orton did the punt angle with Vince the week before the Rumble. So it's just like in my teenage brain, I was like, okay, so Orton's winning the Rumble, because logically you would fire the guy for punting the boss, but then he won the Rumble, and then he won the Rumble. So it's just kind of like yeah, okay. That the rumor at the time that I was hearing, it was going to be an Edge and Christian versus Hardy Boys at WrestleMania 25, and that got leaked out, and Vince was pissed, and he put Christian on ECW, the story goes. because
Yeah,
if you
I've heard
remember the
that.
whole Jeff Hardy attack storyline, who's attacking Jeff Hardy, and it was Matt Hardy for some weird reason. He insinuated that he burned down Jeff's house where Jeff's dog was,
yeah.
which was not wasn't really a good look. But the person behind those attacks were supposed to be Christian, allegedly. So
Ooh, that would
like that. So again, another butterfly effect scenario.
Yeah. Joel,
Yeah,
who do you have?
magically got that.
Yeah.
You gotta go with Jeff Hardy. I love Savage, but like you said, the title was just a prop at that moment, and was really also given to Savage just to build up for the next year with him and Hogan, the lust in your eyes, Hogan, that whole story. So it was really just used as a secondary. It's the Mega Powers, but one of them has the titles, and of course it's not Hogan because we're not making a big deal out of it. Jeff Hardy was such a big moment because it was again one of those guys that you never thought you would see on the top of the mountain, especially in WWE, and especially going against those two guys that were in the ring. Those are two heavy hitters at that moment. You know what I mean? And Jeff Hardy to be in that match with them, it was kind of like, okay, are they really gonna do this? Like, there's no shot. And actually having Jeff come out on top was just amazing. I wish they would have done more with it. It is what it is, but I'm happy he at least got that.
Yeah, that is true. Next round, that concludes the first round. So next round, we have 8 left. Richie, we're going to start with you with this one again. You have CM Punk from 2011
Oh,
versus Hulk
shit.
Hogan in 1984.
Wasn't ready for that one.
This is where it gets harder, by the way. It gets harder and harder every time.
Yeah.
Starting
That's
to
what I love
regret my
about this
topic.
bracket. It's like
I'm starting to regret my topic. No. It's got to be Hogan. You know, it's got to be. Like, I don't personally like Hogan. I didn't grow up with Hogan, but it's got to be Hogan because he set that revolution from the golden era into overdrive after this win. That's where you get all the characters. That's what made WWE what it is today. That's what made people like CM Punk, John Cena, Randy's, everybody that you could see after that to this day. This win was probably the most important thing. So important that people are saying his record from this title win, which isn't a record, it's most days held. For it's that's a whole different discussion. I'm not going to get worked up, but people are touting this as a record of some sort, and that needs, whether you agree with it or not, to be broken. So that has to be counted for something of importance, and so that's why the Hulk Hogan Championship win here is my pick.
Joel, who do you have?
Yeah, it's Hogan. It's the start of everything, man.
I like how we're all upset.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
I was like, I guess.
we know what it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm just
Who
gonna
you
give it to
got,
CM
Nick?
Punk. I'm gonna give it to CM Punk because I don't want to see it get swept. But I agree with your points. I mean, like, I'm not gonna say anything else. I think I would basically do the Joel reaction. It's Hogan. You know.
Yeah.
What else is there to say? Like, that really was you're right. The start of everything.
Said it all. Yeah, he said it all.
Yeah. But I'm just gonna give the Punk because I don't want to see him get swept. I love that moment. That was one of my favorite storylines at that time. Was the whole I'm leaving with the championship. So, but yeah, I guess Hogan had to win, but we all didn't want it to win. But
hot take. I liked his in-ring segment with Vince Punk with the contract demands over the pipe bomb. I like that better.
Ooh, okay.
I do like that promo a lot.
It was
like, I think it's a really underrated.
The whole story.
You're right. It might be better than the pipe bomb, to be honest. Damn, now I'm gonna have to go rewatch that after
this. Yeah, I think with the pipe bomb, I think for me at that time watching it, I'm like, is he saying this on TV? I was more shocked than invested, if that made sense. Mm-hmm. But looking back at it, I could see why people love that one too. But
yeah, a funny story about the pipe bomb for me personally. It got to the point with WWE where I'm like, oh, it's not fun. It's not fun watching it anymore. I'm done. And I'm just like, I'm going to bed. I shut off the TV. And then my friend texts me the next day. He's like, yo, did you see what Punk did? I'm like, what happened? And then he sent me the video, and I'm like, the one day that I'm fed up with, with the one day I'm fed up, I missed the pipe bomb live.
That happens to me so many times. I'll be watching wrestling, all of a sudden I change the channel, and then Joel texts me like, "Did you see this?" I'm like, "What happened now?" Especially during the time when NXT and AEW run at the same time. I missed the whole Sting debuting in AEW. And I didn't know until Joel texted me. I'm like, "What happened?" I just changed the channel. And then I saw it.
What a
I'm like,
random ass moment
yeah.
too.
Yeah. And I'm like, I thought you were kidding. I'm like, why is Sting in AEW? And then I changed the channel. I'm like, shit, he's there. But it happens so many times. Shawn Michaels versus Seth Rollins next matchup. I'm gonna start this one off. I'm gonna go with Shawn Michaels. Because I think for me, like I said in the first round, with Shawn Michaels having to drift away from being that known as the mid-card tag team specialist. Yeah, you can say the same thing with Rollins, but he had a solo career before then. People knew him as the guy in the Shield. How is he going to drift away from being known as that guy? And yeah, although he made his first heel run, like, it was a great heel run. He made it fit so well. And that whole moment of him cashing in at Mania was an unforgettable moment. But I feel like without Shawn Michaels' first championship win, that proved his career so much more than Rollins winning his. I feel like Rollins always had that in him of being a great heel, and because of the whole thing with Ring of Honor and Tyler Black, he's already proven to be that guy. It was just now showing it on TV in front of a larger audience. So I feel like Shawn Michaels winning the championship meant so much more to him than Rollins. So I'm going to have to give it to Shawn Michaels for this one. Joel, what do you have?
Gotta go with Shawn, man. And I'm actually gonna use a line that was used earlier in this podcast. But without Michaels winning the title, Rollins never has the chance or the moment to win the title. So Shawn crawled so Rollins could run.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Richie, who do you have?
Probably two of the best sound bites in WrestleMania history. The boyhood dream has come true for Shawn Michaels versus the heist of the century. I'm going towards the boyhood dream has come true. It's just a more complete moment. Like, it was like a storybook ending. With Rollins, it was like an Infinity War type of ending, where it's like you had more questions and answers on how this is going to affect Seth Rollins and everybody else's career. Great twist, but then you go kind of, all right, then what?
Yeah.
With Shawn Michaels, it's tough because Shawn Michaels, his title reign went from like it was during the toughest period of WWE or one of the toughest periods in WWE. And it wasn't necessarily the cool thing to do. I remember hearing stories of wrestlers who were fans of Shawn Michaels at that time, and they were wearing the zebra hat, the open hand gloves. And in the 90s, that's not really the coolest thing to be wearing. But with Rollins, his title reign kind of felt like an afterthought with the whole Cena Open Challenge that was happening during that same time.
Ooh, good point.
So
yeah,
it was one of those things where the moment, great. Where did he have moments after winning the championship? Absolutely. But Shawn Michaels also had mind games with Mankind. He had good friends, better enemies with Diesel. He had that that odd match with Vader. Which later
Vader, man.
which later didn't really turn out that well for Vader, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And even like the stuff he had with Psycho Sid was fine, like it was fine for what it was. So I'm going with Shawn Michaels.
Okay, not a bad choice.
Shawn got the clean sweep.
Clean sweep, yeah. Next matchup, we have Mankind versus Eddie Guerrero. Joel, do you want to start this one off, or
I really don't. I really
you really don't? Okay.
I'm gonna.
I guess I'll start this one out.
Start off.
I bet.
Start off.
So I want to choose Eddie Guerrero, mainly because I said most of it in the first round, but to be able to go from a short storyline to make it from, I don't want to say nothing to something, but from him winning that Battle Royal or Royal Rumble to then making that storyline about him and making you invested with that short amount of time. And again, with the reaction of him winning afterwards, that says a lot about what Eddie Guerrero was as a performer. And for someone like myself who wasn't a fan at that time, for me to watch all those promos and watch that match and to feel for him after so many years, that also says a lot about his career. And yeah, many people love Mankind's championship win. You could be all happy for him. Not saying I'm not, but it's just I feel like the impact that Eddie Guerrero and what you said, Richie, in the first round, that like Eddie was the first guy to be like, you can overcome anything. You could be the smallest of the roster and still end up being a world champion and be that guy. He opened the doors for someone like all the people you mentioned, like a Kofi, AJ, Daniel Bryan, and more to come. Without Eddie, it wouldn't be possible for all of these guys to feel that to have that underdog story. So for me, I'm gonna have to go with Eddie here. I mean, there's no better story than that one for me. Richie, who do you have?
Like I said before, I saw Eddie Guerrero's legitimate rise as a kid to like like when I was a kid, just watching the whole storyline. So I know the whole storyline and backstory. And his like I said, his WWE, the road to WWE Championship was only 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Mankind, that WWE Championship match was made that night after he lost a match to Triple H. So again, short amount of time, but again, the angle with Mankind and Vince was really hot. But that being said, again, historical point aside, Steve Austin was almost, I don't want to say the center of attention. The crowd was for Mankind, but then exploded when Austin came out. So I think to a certain degree that almost overshadowed Mankind just a little bit for that time period. And then Mankind, of course, took the mic and did the promo, and DX held him on his shoulders. He had the big victory. With Eddie, like I think we said, like despite the interference from Goldberg, they made it in a way where Eddie's victory felt legitimate after the fact, because both him and Brock get up at the same time, and Brock still had control of the match, tried to go with the F5, and then Eddie countered into the DDT onto the belt, and then again using his gimmick, lying, cheating, and stealing to win the championship. But it did it in such a way where it felt not only true to the character, but it was a wholesome, good moment too. So it's like my head and my heart, like my head and my heart is telling me the same thing, and I'm going with Eddie.
Okay, not bad
No,
choice, Joel.
that was greatly put. Yeah, Eddie's getting the sweep. I love the Mankind moment, but again, like you said, Stone Cold was the center of attention. They did kind of mess around with the Goldberg thing. I think Goldberg was just it was a side note. I don't think it was. I think it's because he didn't have the star power that Stone Cold had. So him interfering was like, oh wow, cool. Like this is leading up to something, but didn't take away from the match. And then, like you said, they both get up. He goes for the F5 because he was gonna do the F5 on the belt. Just turned out Eddie reversed it and cheated, but like not really. It was just that the belt was there. So they kind of put it in that way, and just the win after, and the crowd going crazy, him celebrating the clip we talked about earlier with him on the stage, just being always shown. It just shows how important that moment was, and I think that's why I'm going with Eddie.
I think that was expected there for me. I saw that
Yeah.
coming. Next, the last matchup in this round: Steve Austin '98 versus Jeff Hardy in 2008. Joel, so you start this one off.
I'm going with Stone Cold. Stone Cold, and I love Jeff. It was an
Yeah.
awesome title win. It was a great moment in history. Probably one of his highlights. But Stone Cold beating Shawn, having his hand raised by Mike Tyson after, and just everything that followed it just blows Jeff Hardy's title win out the water. Sadly, but it was just Steve Austin's win just meant so much more than Jeff Hardy's. Jeff Hardy's was awesome, like I said, but nothing could top Austin at 14.
Yeah, Richie, who do you have in this matchup?
I have Austin. Again, Jeff, great moment. Probably one of the only people other than Cena to make the spinner belt look good with him.
Yeah.
But with Austin, the moment was bigger. The moment was better in some regards, and it lasted a lot longer. It was also, I think, more beneficial for Steve Austin to have the championship at the time because he was basically the champion without the championship, much like how Cody Rhodes is at this time of the
Yeah.
recording, the champion without the championship. And like he's still the main character. This one just kind of solidified it. When Jeff Hardy won it, he wasn't the main character of the show to a certain degree. It was still the John Cena era. Like they were getting there with Jeff Hardy with the championship, and then he didn't really kickstart into that solo career, being that main character until the whole Edge CM Punk World Heavyweight Championship feud that they had, and that's when I think Jeff Hardy really shined. With this, it still was on the heels of Edge returning at Survivor Series, and Edge was kind of like the anti-hero, like villain character of SmackDown for a bit. SmackDown was still very much his show. And this was the start of that transition for Jeff. But as we would see later down the line, Jeff, like just when Jeff was cooking in WWE, like we were saying with Brock, he left. So I think just for longevity and just for the moment, meaning a little bit more, like we said with Mike Tyson, Steve Austin gets my vote.
Yeah, Steve Austin already won, but I'm still going to choose Jeff Hardy for this one again because I'm biased with Jeff Hardy. That's just a moment that you can't not smile at. You know what I mean? You go back and watch that moment, you just can't help it but smile and be happy for him. There's just again, I wasn't really around at all when Steve Austin won his championship. So I can't really go back. I know it's important to the business. I understand that, but it's just for me knowing that Jeff Hardy and how emotional invested I was in that time and how beloved he was during and after, and how important they made that championship win afterwards with the whole celebration that they did, the whole confetti that came out on SmackDown. You can tell that meant a lot and how much they cared for Jeff Hardy. Sucked that it had to happen. Had to lose it within a month later, but I just felt like that moment. You can go back and rewatch that moment again and how great of a match that was. Like, there's so many close moments where you thought, "Oh, Jeff Hardy could lose, Edge could win it, Triple H could win it." I just felt like that whole moment was just very special for him, especially being a big Jeff Hardy fan. But he's not making it to the next round anyway, so it doesn't really matter at this point. But yeah. So we have our final four.
Shit.
This
I
is
just
hard now.
I just saw the top one. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, yeah. Who wants to start this one off though? Hogan versus Shawn Michaels from '96. Richie, you want to kick this one off? I don't mean to be on the spot, but
no problem. I'll kick it off. It's a tale. It's like two sides of the same coin. You know what I mean? Because with Hogan, it revolutionized the entire business. With Shawn Michaels, it revolutionized an aspect of the business that we see today of the in-ring generation. With Hogan, it was about character. It was the transition from the WWF to the WWF and character-based wrestling. And it depends on what your personal feeling on pro wrestling is. Do you appreciate the character or do you appreciate the in-ring ability? And then the in-ring ability enhances that character or gimmick. What with Hogan, it's all about characters. It wasn't like the occupational gimmicks with, like Repo Man or Isaac Yankem. That was still within the Shawn Michaels realm. But with Shawn Michaels, it took to him winning and Brett winning, just kind of like geared towards more of the in-ring work that you do in the ring rewards you for this championship. And with Hulk Hogan, it's more of these guys are characters now. Look, they had their own like cartoon or Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. And and again, need I say more when it started with WrestleMania was the reason like this was pretty much created to a certain degree. And for that reason alone, I have to go Hogan. It's a tough decision, but overall, Hulk Hogan's win meant more not only for Hogan's career, but everyone after that. It's almost like that old saying where uh everyone's like this one person's making so much money, but it's like he's making so much money he can't fit it all in his pockets. But so
Yeah.
when that happens, dollar bills start falling off and the people behind them start picking them up. And that's exactly what Hogan was there. He was the handpicked guy,
Yeah.
and everybody benefited from that. Whether you were good in the ring or you had a great character, everyone benefited. With Shawn Michaels, the in-ring workers got a second look of ability, but that only geared towards one part of the roster, not the rest of the roster.
I think you just changed my mind there because I was going to go with Shawn Michaels, and
He sold
I
you
had
on it.
yeah, because I was going to say like Shawn. I'm a sucker for like how the title changes a career. Like yeah, Hogan. You can say like you all mentioned in the previous rounds, like Hogan's career. If it wasn't for Hogan's, you wouldn't see. That was like basically the start of the impact he had with that title, how he held it. But Shawn Michaels, it impacted him. And that's what I see in winning the WWE Championship and how it can affect that specific person's career. And not, yeah, you can really say one title reign can change everyone else's afterwards. We said it with Eddie. I think we said it in a different round too, but I feel like I loved Shawn Michaels' win and how it impacted his career. But I think what you said, Richie, really changed my mind and I had to go with Hogan because what you said was true. I felt like, um, so yeah, I had to go with Hogan on that one. Joel, who do you have? I mean, we already have a winner for this matchup,
It's Hogan.
but
It's
yeah,
Hogan. Hogan was larger than life, man.
yeah,
He had every piece of merch. If you could think of something, they probably made it with Hogan's face on it. 1000%. And it just shows that time of the just like like you guys were saying, like it just trickled down. It was the effect of just this was the beginning of it all. And even though Sean it did solidify that new era of okay, it's the workhorse in the ring, and this helps you get the belt. Hogan's moment was just I don't know. I just feel it was so much more bigger because of what it led to, because of just it was Hogan. I don't even know how to put it in words. It was just
yeah,
Hogan. You know
I
what I mean?
understand.
Like
Yeah,
even if you're not the biggest fan of Hogan, like I look at Hogan clips, and I'm just like, I don't know how there wasn't more Macho Man guys, but like
yeah,
everybody loved Hogan, and like you can't take that away from him. He was the guy. There was no other choice. There, you might have thought there was another choice. There wasn't. Sorry, bud, but Hogan was the guy. Started it all,
yeah.
and you gotta go with it, man.
That is true. We got two matchups left. We're almost there. We're almost there. Um, Eddie Guerrero versus Steve Austin. Joel, I'm going to start with you with this one. I know you just said your answer for the previous
Yeah.
round, but who do you have with this one?
I gotta go with Stone Cold.
Oof.
Stone Cold, and that's coming from a diehard Eddie fan. Love Eddie, big win. But that win at 14, just the way Hogan's win changed the industry. This one flipped it on its head. This one just threw everything out the window and said we're changing what pro wrestling is. And I think without Steve Austin's win, we don't have the wrestling we have today. Um, yeah,
I'm going to go with Eddie Guerrero because similar to what not similar, but in terms like I'm a sucker for underdog stories. You know,
yeah.
that's a big underdog story. Um, and then like we said in the previous rounds, without this one, we probably wouldn't see other ones. Or
Hmm.
I don't want to say we wouldn't say we would see them because it's really booking decisions that book them, but it's like that really inspired a lot of people. Eddie inspired a lot of people to do that because of his story and how he impacted the business from that point on. And um, he sadly passed away like not that long after, but he meant so much to the business and uh that story of like again short timing of the storyline, but he made it work and he made I feel like it was just a great I don't know how to explain it. It was just a great feeling to watch that, even as someone who wasn't a fan at that time. I wish I was. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like his story just made it so much better, and you couldn't hate that moment. I feel like. So I had to go with Eddie. Richie, you got to break the ice here. Who do you have win?
Baker.
Yeah. Like Eddie's one of my favorites of all time. Steve Austin, I have a tremendous respect for Steve Austin. But again, if I went from last round saying, look, Hogan impacted the big business more at large, and Shawn Michaels only did a sub genre of it, I have to go with the same mentality here. With Steve Austin, same analogy. Bunch of money coming in. He's not going to fit it all in his pockets. Some is going to trickle out. Same thing for guys like even Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, like very popular acts. And even Eddie Guerrero, when he jumped, benefited from the Steve Austin effect.
Yeah.
With Eddie Guerrero, did open, like we said before, did open up a lot of eyes to guys that can be WWE Championship caliber. Not only that, but for I remember WWE wanting that Hispanic star to be a big market for them. So marketing wise, Eddie Guerrero was absolutely the right choice for that. But again, I have to stick with my guns from the previous bracket. I can't let emotion cloud my judgment here. I'm going with Steve Austin.
Oh, breaks my heart that Eddie had to go so soon. Breaks my heart, but makes sense. Makes sense here. Now the final matchup determining the whole entire bracket: Hulk Hogan versus Steve Austin. I'm just gonna kick it off. I feel like Hulk Hogan. I agree with everything we said in the previous rounds. I don't think there's really any more to add to it besides how big of a draw he was in wrestling. Uh, the way I just again we said in the previous rounds. I don't think I have anything else to add to it. We pretty much said it all. But I just feel like Hulk Hogan was the starting point of championship wins and meant more to the business. We even talking about it to this day with Will Roman break his record. Um, Still talked about to this day, but and I still stand on what I said in the first round of how Steve Austin's first championship win may not be his best moment in wrestling in his career. There's probably more you can think of over his first championship win. So I'm gonna have to go with Hulk Hogan on this one. Joel, who do you have, Austin or Hogan?
I'm gonna go Stone Cold. I'm gonna go
Ooh.
Austin.
You're gonna put
I'm
Richie in
gonna
the hot
go.
seat.
I'm gonna
You're gonna
go
put Richie in
Austin.
the hot seat.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna put him in the hot seat. Hogan is Hogan, but Austin is Austin, man. And the same way Hogan kicked off that era for WWE and like kicked off everything, Steve Austin just elevated it and helped bring it to another level. I feel like the same thing we were talking about last round with Hogan, that like it was during the time where it was a bunch of gimmicks and like it was just like your Repo Man and stuff like that. I feel like it was the same thing with Austin, but just more on a like I guess adult level. We got porn stars, we got you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like the way that they went was way different, but we also got people that it wasn't like they were larger than life, but they were actually humanized. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It was Stone Cold. He was just a guy that drank beer, like a bunch of people that were watching at the crib watching Raw. The
yeah.
Rock was just a guy that was arrogant, had a little bit of money. I'm sure you know at least one person like that. You know what I mean? It was more humanized than in the '80s where it was just larger than life stars. And where would you see a Hulk Hogan walking around? You know what I mean? Like nobody
Exactly.
looked
Yeah.
like that. It was different back then. But I think the Austin move just elevated and just elevated it in a different way and just helped add on top of Hogan. So I gotta give it to Austin.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Richie, hot seat determines the winner of the bracket.
This is
Who do
tough.
you got? Buzzer beater on the line.
All right.
No pressure, by
There
the
we
way.
go.
No pressure.
Yeah. So these are very similar effects of this. These title wins have very similar effects for both of these guys in the business at large. With Hogan, the difference is he was always the plan. His winning the championship was the plan for WWE. This was the blueprint. This is what we're going to do to capture a nationwide audience during the MTV era and team up with that. With Austin was never touted as the guy. He was always going to be the mechanic because that's how the powers that be saw him. He was always going to be that guy. And he had to fight through a bunch of different things. Even when he suggested being Stone Cold, they thought it was the other way. And they decided to make him more like a snowsuit kind of guy, where Steve Austin had to kind of grip the bull by the horns a bit and say, no, this is where I'm trying to take this character. And it got tremendously successful on its own organically. And it's almost like you kind of have to pick which one is more impressive. I don't want to say Hulk Hogan was handed the championship, even though, we all know wrestling's predetermined. No one actually wins. With Hogan was always the plan. Hogan was recruited from AWA to be in WWF by Vince Jr. He was going to be the plan. Steve Austin was the guy who took wrestling from its low point into another surge of popularity. So I think that's almost more impressive to a certain degree. He made wrestling almost cool again. Now with Hogan bringing in all the celebrities, with Cyndi Lauper, with everything, and then you have Steve Austin with Mike Tyson. So instead of a clean-cut image with the Hulkamania era, then you have the Austin era with all these other different factors, and you had these other cast of characters with both of them and surrounded by both of them. With Hogan, both times, with WrestleMania created from this point. So with that being said, without Hogan, we don't get the Austin moment. We don't get Austin as the character. We don't get that moment. And even though Austin winning here pretty much trajected another surge of wrestling popularity, it was going to go that direction with or without Austin winning the championship. Just like currently now, we're seeing Cody Rhodes without the championship kind of led, along with Roman Reigns, another surge of wrestling popularity. And he's currently not champion. Now, once he is champion, is that going to be the reason why wrestling popularity surged? Here, Hogan caused that surge of popularity from winning the WWE Championship. Austin, his championship win just solidified he is the guy. So with that being said, I think Hogan is probably the right pick here.
Oof. Then I guess he wins the entire bracket.
Yeah. He's a big bang of wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So Hulk Hogan's 1984 WWE Championship win was determined as our best first WWE Championship win. Richie, we thank you again for coming on.
Richie.
Thank you for having me.
Just under an hour and a half, but before we end it in, do you want to plug in Wrestling Retold and Relive? I said it right this time. I didn't mess up.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you. So I host a podcast, comes out every Tuesday. It's called Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I have a guest, or it's either by myself. Usually I have a guest, and I let them choose the topic. It could be a past storyline, a retrospective of a career of a wrestler, and we just talk about it for an hour. I just did one with last week of Wrestling Podcast, Dylan. We went over the ratings and demographics of pro wrestling and how they changed as a whole. I did one with Suplex Media, and we talked about the DNA of CM Punk and how his wrestling character kind of intertwines with his personal life and by the perception of the audience. And I also just hosted a very, very successful Cody Rhodes versus The Rock debate. This is before everything kind of happened on that SmackDown. So there's a little things that aren't addressed, but it's an over 2-hour debate with different personalities. We have James from Ruthless Talk, we have Phil Kahn, we have Laugh Not Famous on there, and I'm here moderating the whole thing, making sure we get some peaceful decorum. And this is probably the most peaceful debate you'll ever hear on a pro wrestling topic ever. So that's my pro wrestling podcast. I also do short videos on TikTok at Retold Richie Mars, and they're mostly geared towards the current state of wrestling on the storylines. It's mostly going to be storyline based things. I say suggestions, I say my thoughts on it, and just character development for different superstars in general. So if you want to spend a minute and a half a day, you could just see me. Usually I'll have 3 to 5 videos there. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. If it's your cup of tea, cool. If not, hey, at least you tried.
Yeah, we'll definitely plug in all of your socials and everywhere people can find you in the description of the YouTube video. So that way people can find you easily. Thank you again, Richie, for coming on this episode. We appreciate you. And we hope to have you back on too. So yeah, again, this is Nick, joined by Joel, and we will see you guys next time.
Catch you.